Yes, everybody, welcome back. Thank you for joining me again here on YouTube. I'm back today to take you through one of my new tracks, this one called Not a Kick. And you've probably heard this already. If you haven't, just type it in on YouTube, give it a quick listen. This one came out on Deep Medi a few weeks ago. It's the main track off the new record. And yeah, the feedback on this has been wicked over the months, and I reckon it's definitely one of the best tracks that I've ever made, even though it's one of the simplest. You'll be looking at the screen recording right now and you can see that there's 36 tracks in here, and a lot of these are just replicated tracks of existing elements, like this bottle, for example. You know, you've got 3, 4, 5, 6 different tracks for this one element, which is something that I do a lot in my Logic files. I kind of layer stuff up, and instead of automating different elements, I just split them onto different tracks and stuff. But yeah, before we get into the tutorial, I just want to really quickly say, you guys watching might have bought the producer pack sample packs already, but if you haven't, you can get those from my Big Cartel shop, and pretty much every element of this track is in, I think, producer pack number 2. Some of these elements are in producer pack number 1. But yeah, if you're a producer and you want to get your hands on a load of my samples that are mastered and ready to use in your own tunes, then I'll put a link in the video description. Anyway, right, let's get into the tutorial. So I'm just going to walk you through every element that makes up the track, and yeah, just explain how I made it all, basically. So let's go. So starting from the top down, this is pretty much the main element of the track. It's the sub/kick. Right, I'll just play this to you first and explain what it is. So, if you've heard this track already, there's like a big, punchy, crazy sounding sub-kick thing, which sounds like this. And that's the main layer of the sound, basically. So what have I done to make that? Well, let me take the effects off first and show you what the raw sound was. So I'll take the compressor off, take the EQ off, take the overdrive and the bit crusher off. And as you can hear, it's the sound from Out of Take Control. It's got a little bit less mid in it, but that's basically it. What it is it's just a kind of an 808 style sound, and then I've compressed it slightly. We all know what a compressor does. I don't really need to talk too much about that. EQ'd it very slightly, just taken out a little bit of the bottom end so it's not too rumbly. The main part of this sound, I mean, when we apply some overdrive, that makes it sound a lot kind of thicker, a little bit heavier, but obviously the main kind of crunch comes from the bit crusher. And in terms of settings, fairly extreme resolution on this, but that's about it. Again, I'm just using Logic stock plugins, nothing too fancy. Logic stock overdrive. And then to make the kind of rhythmic pattern, what I've done is, as usual, separated this element onto different tracks. So I've got the main part, which kind of stretches out across the track, which is, again, this sound. Let me play it one more time for you. It's just got release on it, nothing too complicated. And then I've got a tighter layer underneath, which has no release on it whatsoever. So basically the reason that I've split those is because if these tight parts had the same release as this part here, then, well, it'd all just be clashing, wouldn't it? All the notes would be running into each other, basically, and it wouldn't kind of gel right. I kind of hope that makes sense. If you guys make music, you'll know what I mean. And yeah, that's pretty much that element. Pretty simple. So underneath those parts, I've just got a layer of white noise. I'm not sure whether you'll be able to hear this, but let me give it a quick play for you guys. And all that's doing basically is acting as kind of a noise bed underneath the sub and kick. And the reason that I added that was just, again, to fill out the frequency spectrum, because it's a pretty minimal track. There's not a massive amount going on. It's pretty much just this sub and drums, give or take, you know, some of the little bits and bobs. And it's a really kind of punchy, clicky, dry track, which isn't really like me, to be honest. I use a lot of kind of pads and reverb and stuff usually, but yeah, I was just trying something new. So if I play those together, hopefully you can hear how they kind of sit with each other. And yeah, it's almost acts as a sweep, which is like a lead in and a lead out to every time the sub plays, basically. So anyway, let's take those off, move on to the next element of the track. Right, let's check out the hats. And that's just a sound literally straight out of the sample pack. And in fact, how did I make that hat? Well, it's actually not even a hat. It's a clip of white noise, and I've literally snapped it right down to being, God, like an eighth of a second long or something like that, and I've just applied effects. And again, all I've done to that is added some bit crusher. I haven't even EQ'd it, which doesn't surprise me, to be honest, and more overdrive. So basically I've just taken a white noise sound, clipped it down so it's a really short sound, added some distortion effects, and there you go. And then I've just split that into 2 channels, and the reason that I've done that is just to save on automation, really, because there's nothing worse than when you're trying to automate one track and, you know, pan it and change the velocity and stuff. It just gets so complicated. I find it's easier to just make a new track, and then you can kind of edit that new track to do whatever you want. So in this case, I've turned it down slightly and panned it right. So what have we got here? A clap sound. A snare sound. Yep. I know what I've done here. And yep, okay. What I've done is I've layered these 3 sounds together to make this. That's like the finished sound. And this sound consists of these 3 elements, which is basically a nice high crispy clap, and then a kind of lower, more low frequency clap sound. So we've got this element here, clap 1, which is filling out the tops, this element here, which is filling out the bottoms, and then a bit of noise to kind of glue the 2 together. That's my thought process anyway. That's pretty much how I build my snares. I just layer the elements that sound right to my ear. You know, is it crispy enough? Is it low enough in frequency so it's going to fill that kind of bottom end a little bit and not just rip people's ears off? And yeah, it's as simple as that, really. Just three layers. And again, if you're a producer and you want to get your hands on these sounds, all 3 of those layers are in the producer packs as well. So down to this next element, which is just going to be a hat sound by the looks of it. Yeah, just a massively crushed hat in the style of this track. Basically, every element is just like smashed with some kind of distortion of some kind. What's this got on it? Right, so I've put a tremolo on it, which is one of my favourite plugins. Basically, that's just going to move it across the stereo field as it plays. Fairly extreme settings. If you use Logic X, then you can nip in and have a play with that. That's a really good plugin, actually. It's great for pads, great for top layer basses and stuff, where you can just give it some movement, some kind of modulation. A little bit of bit crush on there, and a spreader just to bring it back in the stereo field very slightly, so it's not to in your face. Simple as that. Got this little breath sound. Where are you? There you are. Play this. This is probably my favourite part of this track. It's just one little recording of me just going, or something like that. Yeah, but all I've done to that is literally, once again, split it across the 2 channels, 1 pan left, 1 pan right, and they play pretty much on top of each other, very slightly dragged apart, and the reason that I've done that is to, again, spread it across the stereo field, so I'm not just chucking a sound right down the middle of the mix, which is just going to sound, it just sounds a bit thrown in there, to be honest, when people do that with certain elements. And again, in terms of processing, more bit crush. Oh no, just bit crush everything. Spreader, again, to spread it across the stereo field very slightly before we actually pan it. And a tiny little bit of reverb on this. And by tiny, I mean, how much have we got on here? 0.15 seconds of reverb there. So that's literally just putting it in a room very slightly to stop it being too dry of a sound. Underneath that, another little effect, which is just this little pop sound. I've not got a clue where that came from, to be honest. I think I probably took that from... maybe it was a sample from a record or offline. Not a clue. Sounds pretty cool though. I liked it. And again, that's just got a little bit of reverb. I've put a little bit of bit crush on that to stretch the sound out. And again, a spreader. Nothing too complicated. Now, probably after the kick and the sub sounds, the main element of this track is the bottle sound, which I've made into a riff. So let me play this for you. And where did this sound come from? Okay, well, when I had the idea for this track, I knew I had that riff in my head. Don't ask me where it came from, but I had that riff in my head. And I wanted to do that riff with a bottle. Again, I must have been on crack or something that day, but I thought to myself, I want to get a bottle sound and do a riff with it. So I went on a website that I use called freesound.org. I think it is, might be freesound.com. And I typed in bottle, and that's where that sound came from. I just checked out some sounds on there, downloaded one, and I brought it into the EXS24 sampler. I've used the sampler to draw in these notes. Like that. And then I've just added effects. So I've added an ensemble to give the sound a little bit of movement. I've added a tape delay, which you can barely hear on there, to be honest. If I take this off, turn it back on. Yeah, so it just stretches the sound out very, very slightly. Reverb to give it some room within the track. If I take this off, then it just sounds way too dry. That's never going to work. Turn it on, spreads it across the track fairly nicely. Not too much on there, just to give it a little bit of room, basically. And then some EQ to make it fit frequency-wise. So I've just taken out some of the low end, taken out a tiny little bit of the mids up at the top. And yeah, that's about it really. I mean, in terms of how the track rolls in, what I've done is I've replicated the layer. I've left all the bottom frequency in, and the reason that I've done that is because in the start of the track, there's pretty much no elements in it. There's bass, and that's about it. There's no pads, there's no under effects. So I wanted to leave the bottom end in to just fill out the frequency spectrum, basically. And then the sound just slowly rolls in. Easy as that. And then just before the drop, I've just bounced one of these notes out, reversed it, that leads into the drop. Simple stuff. Boom. Right, next layer. Oh yeah, before I go any further as well, I just want to mention, because I've actually forgot to mention this, but this is, with the exception of the bottle, this is the order that I've made the track. So I started with the bottle, and then everything else is built like this. So I did the bottle, then I did the sub kick, then I did the noise, the sweep, the hats, the claps, blah blah blah. So yeah, if that kind of helps you guys learn anything, that's the way that I've built the track. Next element, just a little, nothing too complicated. I don't even think I've put any effect on that. No, I haven't. No, just a tiny bit of spreader. 15% say. Yep, nothing too crazy. What's this? I don't even know what this is. Perk. I remember what that is now. Yeah, so that's just like a fill to split the sections. Oh, it's a perk loop, of course. Yeah, this I remember making actually now. This is in the sample pack. This is in the producer pack, sample pack as well, if you want to get your hands on this sound. I think this was me. I think I made this by hitting a spoon on the cooker and recording it. Nothing too exciting there. And again, I've just put some distortion on it, some overdrive, some bit crush to give the sound some texture. And then, as usual, I've split it across the tracks, panned one right, panned one left, adjusted the velocities very slightly. Next element, what have we got? Under effects. Next element. Oh, this makes the track. Listen to this. Yeah, when it doesn't sound like much on its own, but when you hear it in the context of the full track, it makes a little bit more sense. But Oteka, God, I can't remember where this came from, this sound. It might have been out of some kind of film soundtrack effects pack, so something like that. It might even have been some kind of techno effects pack or something that I got from wherever I got it from. But it's a wicked sound. And if I just take all the effects off for a second, see how it sounds. Wow, that's come a long way. Right, so I've pitch shifted that sound. Sounds like a pad actually, some kind of movie pad or something. But yeah, I've pitch shifted it. And then compressed it very slightly. Taken out that bottom end. Bit crushed it and added a tremolo yet again to spread it across the stereo field. And yeah, that's how I made that sound basically. Downlifter, which I use in pretty much every one of my tracks. Boom. Siren. So again, if you watch the Take Control tutorial that I did, which is the last tutorial that I did here on the channel, I basically made a siren out of a recording of a police car driving past, which is what you're hearing here. And in this case, what I've done is taken that sound and I've just used these kind of vinyl record speed up and slow down effects to just use it differently, basically, just to process it in a different way and make it fit within this track. And yeah, this is how it sounds. Let me play it for you again. Boom. That's definitely one of the elements that makes the track, I think, that sound, because it sounds weird. You know, like, I mean, if I didn't know how I made that, I don't think I'd know how to make that kind of sound, but obviously I do now, and so do you guys. Nothing fancy here, just a white noise sweep. Yeah, we all know how that sounds. Don't have to go into too much detail there. Get rid of this. Effects hit. What does this sound like? Ah, yeah, I remember what this is now. Yeah, so if you've heard this track in full already, you'll know exactly what this sound is and how it kind of contributes to the overall mix. Yeah, so these are just to add to the atmosphere, really, underneath the intro and the breakdown parts of the track. And I've just split them across tracks once again. One is, let's see, yeah, one's EQ'd high, one's EQ'd low. Let me just show you that real quick. So as you can see, one is displaying the highs, one's displaying the lows. I'll play these for you once again really quick. And there you have it. That's all the elements that make up the Not a Kick track. Boom. All right. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that quick tutorial taking you through the Not a Kick track. If you haven't already checked out the record that this just came out on, go check it out. This came out on Mahler's label Deep Medi a couple weeks ago now, Medi number 102. Came out with two of the tracks called Commandment and Hallucinogen. Vinyl, digital, all the available in all the usual places. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Feedback would be wicked if you want to hit the comments section below. Let me know if there's any other tracks of mine that you want me to deconstruct for you, do a tutorial on. I'm more than happy to do that for you guys. Yeah, positive feedback appreciated. Negative feedback will be very helpful if you have anything to share. Don't forget to grab the producer pack, sample packs, if you want to get your hands on some of these sounds from out of this and my other tracks. Producers, they could be really useful for giving you some inspiration or just getting you making some new music. And I will see you guys back here on the channel for another video soon.